What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're going to jump in with some Destiny 2 news and updates for this week. So in the video we'll touch on new content aboard the Cabal Ghost ship, we do have the Dead Man's Tale Catalyst quest, as well as new hidden chests in the mission, and we'll touch on a couple of future secrets. We also have just a little bit of discussion linked to Season 14, and then some new story progress to touch on this week, recent changes to the game, some emerging issues and ones that Bungie are looking at, plus we'll talk about a pretty broken exotic setup that allows the deletion of bosses in the game, and we've got some Guardian Games bits to touch on for 2021. So guys, as always, I hope you do enjoy this one, and if you do, a rating below very much helps us out. But now, let's get into it. So for today, the first things we should touch on, of course the Dead Man's Tale Catalyst is now available via Zavala's new quest to complete the master version of Presage. And in this first week at least, while it does list barrier champions, there aren't actually any in the mission, so that's interesting and it could be something that kind of evolves or comes up in the future, but for now, it is essentially a harder timed version of the mission where we get 25 minutes to get the clear, and once we've finished, we're able to go and pick up the catalyst from Zavala, and it basically requires 800 kills to be completed, but additionally opening the weekly chest sync icon will grant progress, so we did get the week 1 chest last week, right near the entrance. And this week's chest is toward the end of the kind of intro maze on the ship, immediately before you drop down into the first room with spores in it. And we do literally pass the datapad on the floor as we head through the mission, and this one, once interacted with, does open up a grading in the floor where we can pick up the chest, and I believe this gives 13% progress or something like that. But we are limited to 1 chest per week, so if you want to unlock the catalyst quickly, kills are going to be the easiest way to do it. And that catalyst does increase hipfire rate of fire and remove accuracy penalties on the weapon, so essentially when firing from the hip it becomes a 180 RPM scout. Definitely pretty fun, and let us know if you've managed to upgrade it down in the comments section. But other changes in Glycon for the week include that with the master version we can now earn the next chapter emblem, and this is acquired by getting a flawless completion of the quest on master difficulty. But there have been a couple of reports that suggest this is an individual objective, so if you run the mission with the team and your teammates die but you stay alive all the way through, apparently it can still drop, which is pretty cool. And apart from that, in terms of loot drops, we know that more mysteries await on the ship in future, and finding all of the upcoming collectibles will award the Text Mechanica Gilgamesh shell. But other curious things, spoiler alert right here, but the Crown of Sorrow has also been archived and housed in a secret room beneath the kind of chest room in the mission. So there's definitely more to come over the course of the season. Once again, give us your experiences inside of the master difficulty and acquiring the catalyst this week down in the comments section. But moving on, to touch on some season stuff very briefly, Destiny Newscom tweeted that the API was updated alongside the patch yesterday, and it now lists just a tiny tidbit relating to Season 14, so Season of the Redacted is listed, and the main info being that the start date will be May 11th, and the season will run all the way up till August 24th. Of course that isn't the official statement from Bungie, but the date we currently have listed in the API. And either way, for seasons this year, we're looking at May, and then another season in August, before Season 16 kicks off in November, alongside the Witch Queen. I think there's a lot of anticipation that we're fairly likely to get the Vault of Glass back next season, especially because it's right in the middle of the year between expansions, right? Bungie rarely release back-to-back raids, and so since we're likely to get a new raid in the Witch Queen, we're pretty hopeful that Season 14 is when we'll see the return of Vault of Glass, but give us your thoughts about it down below. Now though, to touch on some patch changes and dev commentary for this week very briefly, once again, Bungie said that they fixed an issue where players couldn't access the Fallen Saber Strike in the playlist. And it is now in the game, but apparently is still buggy, and in some instances when the boss dies, it can actually wipe the team and throw you back to the start of the strike. So we'll have to see if Bungie give us any updates on that. But also, you may have noticed that some of the missing mods from our inventories since the start of the season have now appeared on gear again, and we should be able to equip all of the mods that we expect to be able to equip on gear. Players have been discussing an increase in enemies teleporting since last season, and generally more lag inside of PvE, and Cosmo did say that we're aware and investigating the reports of enemies teleporting getting worse this season, so it is something on the list, but also they're looking into finicky Gambit mote pickup. It is something that's been affected by a few different network issues, despite recent updates to it, so either way, they are things that Bungie are continuing to track down. Up next though, in the world of broken builds, and shall we say, very strong exotics, my friend Duddits and the rest of the clan have been playing around with some new mods this season, and these help the Titan's Thunder Crash do some massive damage, so you may have seen some of this already, but the Curious of the Falling Star exotic for Titans gives a significant increase to Thunder Crash super damage. However, if you pair it firstly with Volatile Conduction from the artifact, this increases damage to Arc Supers when critically wounded, so if you get your health really low just before you Thunder Crash, you're going to do even more damage, but If we also have a player with focusing lens from the artifact, this allows light-based subclasses to do bonus damage to enemies affected by stasis. So, as you can imagine, things get pretty wild, and there are a few moving parts, but you basically use stasis on the target, then have critically wounded titans use Thunder Crash on them as well. Plus, on top of this, it's possible to apply debuffs or bonus damage with Tractor Cannon, Melting Point, or even Divinity. Obviously, some of these options will work better with a team, but even as a solo player, this can be used to comfortably delete a lot of bosses, including raid bosses, or at the very least do some significant damage. So just wanted to highlight that. Seriously fun one, and it isn't a glitch, it was designed this way, although it may be even stronger than Bungie first thought it was, especially for deleting Gambit bosses and stuff like that. So I'd be curious as to whether you've used this build or the new exotic in general, and if you haven't, definitely it's something to pay attention to. A quick feature right here on the Swarm, which is the new strike weapon, available inside of the Nightfall this week as a random drop. So of course it is the third one in the rotation, but in case you're curious in terms of bonuses, for the trait slots we can get Killing Wind, as well as Outlaw, and then Bottomless Grief, Dynamic Sway Reduction, and Surplus. And then the second slot can get Zen Moment, Slideways, Tap the Trigger, One for All, where hitting 3 separate targets will increase damage for a moderate duration, but also Dragonfly and Vorpal Weapon. So there are some interesting options there. Of course, it is a high impact frame machine gun, this time around with arc damage. Vorpal Weapon definitely is a good bonus to have on this thing. So let us know down below if you've been lucky and managed to pick up the Swarm inside of the Nightfall playlist this week. It should mean, as far as we know, that the rotation will go back to having Shadowkeep be the main drop for next week. And there is a random interesting bonus inside of the database this season. It's the only one that doesn't currently belong to a weapon. And so maybe it's something we're going to see with an upcoming weapon this season, or it's just in the database very early. But it's called Flourish, and defeating combatants with grenade abilities increases the weapon's damage. And that's certainly a pretty interesting one. Maybe we could even be looking at a future Catalyst bonus or something. And it's an interesting possibility, especially with Guardian Games coming back later on this season. Of course, last year Titans managed to get the win, and it's looking like from some of the classified triumphs that we're going to be picking up medals from Eva in a very similar fashion to what we had last year, and kind of completing them like bounties to increase the team's daily score. And otherwise, the early entries that we have in the database at the moment are actually 4 emotes for the event, so there are going to be things like Powerlift, as well as just juggling. We can see kind of the icons for these at the very least, but also blowing up and cracking up, and then the stand on ceremony emote as well. I am curious to see if we get any brand new kind of unique rewards for the event this year, but of course it will be happening a little bit later on this season. And the final thing to mention briefly, but DMG did respond to some feedback about trials, and there was some commentary right there about community managers from Bungie actually playing with streamers and known members of the Destiny community, I suppose. And he says one of the reasons they do that is to get more feedback about how different players approach encounters, maps, and different team builds, but they totally discuss feedback outside of those trials cards, not only from forums, Reddit, or even Twitter, but also hands-on with friends and other co-workers at Bungie. And he acknowledges that still, there are many ways for trials to improve, whether it's rewards, matchmaking, mode timers, and general rules. He also talks about making it a friendlier experience for non-sweats, and points out that they've got DDoS protection coming to consoles very soon, which should be another update that we actually get this season. But of course, with new drops inside of Trials, a bit of a renewed focus on actually going into Crucible at the moment, but still with a lot of the issues that Crucible's had for some time. It is kind of restarting that conversation, so it's another element that I'd be curious to get thoughts from you guys about in the comment section. But for today, guys, that's everything that we have to round up inside of this video. So as always, I hope you have enjoyed it, and feel free to give us a like rating down below if you have. But also, if you want to be kept up to date with the world of Destiny 2, feel free to get subscribed and I will keep you posted. But for today, guys, whatever you get up to, I hope you have an awesome week.